And we'll see if after today Anna Wintour also. How did you even know that?
Well, I read the online news. It happens across the Twitter.
The Twitter thing?
Yes.
Thank you, Lillian. Some breaking news, and we're expecting to hear, frankly, at any moment now from the Attorney General Loretta Lynch. There's a news conference that was set to begin 7 minutes ago. It should be happening any minute, but this is going to be big news. We've gotten word that she will announce federal hate crime charges against the suspect in the Charleston, South Carolina church massacre. Dylan Roof, as you may remember, reportedly told his victims that he was trying to start a race war. And when he did so, when he shot 9 church members dead there inside that building. Joining us now is former prosecutor Dan Schorr. We'll hear from the Attorney General in just a moment. But the effect of hate crimes charges would be what?
Well, first of all, it sends a message that the racial component of this is going to be prosecuted also, because South Carolina does not have a hate crimes prosecution law. Excuse me. So the federal government can bring those hate crime charges and address the racial component of it. A lot of times it's hard to tell if someone really was racially motivated, but here there's an online manifesto tied to Dylan Roof. So it really seems that he was racially motivated here, and the state court isn't addressing that, although he will be prosecuted for murder in the state court and face the death penalty there.
There was a survivor, though, who spelled out pretty clearly what it was that he had said. And,
right.
And it was that he wanted to start a race war. I guess you can agree with or disagree with the idea of, for instance, capital punishment, or in this case, with hate crime laws. But in essence, we know they exist. If there's ever been a hate crime, it sounds like this one has all the elements.
Absolutely. And the other part of the hate crime justification is that even though the case is so overwhelming in the state court, you have a confession, you have the online manifesto, you have witnesses, you never know what's going to happen in a case. There could be some technicality. There could be that 1 in a million jury that acquits even with overwhelming evidence. So now you have federal charges that, just in case the state court prosecution doesn't go as expected, you have this backup where he could be prosecuted and also face the death penalty in federal court.
Now, generally speaking, there are 2 reasons under the statutes that a hate crime law would apply. Could you go through those with us?
Right. Well, first of all, it would apply if there was some racial motivation, and you want to address that, and it might enhance the punishment. The other time it's used is if the state court prosecution isn't done right, or if the federal government doesn't feel the state prosecutors are actually addressing what happened. So the federal government may say, we're going to step in for whatever reason, and we're going to prosecute this case under the racial motivation hate crimes laws because the state court didn't do the right thing or didn't end up in the right result. But I think the other reason, as I said before, is it's a fail-safe. Just in case the state court prosecution doesn't lead to what we see as the right result, you have the federal government able to also prosecute him.
And bigger picture, it sounds like, and this is what you said off the top, that the federal government is trying to tell us something that everybody in their right mind already knows.
Right. The racial part of this has to be addressed. And although South Carolina is prosecuting him for murder, he's going to probably face the death penalty, although that hasn't been announced yet. The federal government is going to address the racial component of this killing, which is extremely disturbing. And South Carolina doesn't have the hate crimes law to prosecute him under that theory.
The accusations are really striking if you break them down. This man had no beef with any individual by anything we've ever heard. He had no beef with that particular facility, or the people of that neighborhood, or the people of that community. Had no real beef with anything that particular lawmakers or leaders in this particular facility had. He had a beef with a race, and decided, not randomly, to take it out in this place where race had been such a dividing and earth-shattering, a changing series of moments over more than a century. In this spot, it's hard to imagine a more heinous place for a more heinous crime to take place.
Right, and his online manifesto seems to address that, and this shows that he's aware of that, and that was part of his motivation here. A lot of times in hate crimes cases, it's hard to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that race was a motivator. If you had a white person kill a black person, you may think race is a motivation, but how do you prove that beyond a reasonable doubt? However, in this case, we have overwhelming evidence that there was a racial motivation. His statements at the scene, his targeting this black church, his online manifesto. So unlike the normal hate crimes case that's difficult, this is really a very powerful, strong case for the federal government.
We have, in his own words, in many different ways. You mentioned the manifesto. Also this witness who was frankly a victim as well. And then the speech of so many others, all coming directly from him. It seems almost open and shut.
It is open and shut, but as I said before, you never know what's going to happen. The judge can give an incorrect jury instruction, and that can lead to a successful appeal. There could be that odd jury that just doesn't follow the evidence. So you have this federal prosecution looming probably after the state court prosecution, just in case.
A live look in Washington at the Department of Justice now. Again, this news conference is running a little bit behind, but we do want to hear the Secretary's words about why this would be prosecuted as a hate crime and exactly what has led her to this, the specifics thereof, and we'll go there for that when Loretta Lynch gets started. Attorney General asking questions after delivering the information that a grand jury in South Carolina, a federal grand jury, has returned a 33-count indictment against Dylan Roof, the man accused of shooting up the church there in South Carolina and killing 9 African-American worshipers, killing them because of their race and to interfere with the practice of their religion. Former prosecutor Dan Schorr is here. The interfering with the practice of religion, that's not one that had come to mind until today.
Right. It's another reason why you can bring charges under the federal hate crime statute. So he's facing charges for interfering with their free practice of religion and also being motivated by race when he committed these crimes. He's also being charged with some weapons charges because of using the weapon that he used during the killings.
Yeah, and hollow point bullets. If
Right.
there's been a reference to that before, our research team can't find it. I mean, you're out to kill when you use weapons like that.
Yeah, this crime obviously shocked the nation, shocked the world, and that's why you're seeing not only the state charges that may lead to the death penalty, but also federal charges that also may lead to the death penalty.
On the matter of who goes first, the state or the feds, there's a pattern here, isn't there?
Usually, almost always, the state goes first, but the federal government has the right to proceed first if they wish. It sounds like they're working together very cooperatively, so you would expect the state prosecution to go forward, and the federal prosecution can still go forward in court, but you probably wouldn't see a trial in federal court until the state court finished their case.
Got to get out of here, but how would you defend this guy?
In these cases where there's no factual or legal defense, you almost always see the insanity defense, even if there is no strong basis for insanity, because he can't say it wasn't him. He can't say mistaken identity. There's really nothing he can say, and that's such as in the Colorado shooting case, you see the insanity defense being used, but hardly ever successfully.
At the movie massacre case.
Right, and it's hardly ever successful, but that's really the last resort defense when someone is just caught with a confession, online manifesto. People know he did it. So
will we have to hear from this guy at some point?
He might testify in his own defense.
He can if he wants to?
He can if he wants to. The other thing that may happen is he may offer to plead guilty and take life in prison in order for the death penalty to be removed. That's often a negotiation that happens in these types of cases. And then it would be up to both the state prosecutors and the federal prosecutors about whether they wanted to give such a deal.
Your prosecutors would have to say, yeah, if you'll plead guilty, then we won't put you to death.
Right, there would be life in prison, no possibility of parole. The family of the victims would have to agree to that, not legally, but that's in practice. They would only do it if the family agreed to it. And that's the kind of negotiation you sometimes see in a mass murder like this.
That one would surprise me here, frankly.
It's unusual, but if the family wanted it and if it spared the family having to go through a trial that they didn't want to go through, you might see that result. But there's certainly going to be a lot of support for the death penalty here, both on the state level and the federal level.
Who can forget the members of this church and the family members of those who were gunned down in their own sanctuary with Bibles in their hands? Who can forget their families coming forward to say, in the very early days, I forgive you?
It was amazing. They were right away saying that they forgave him. Now, I can't imagine feeling that way. They must be so strong to be able to say that and feel that. But the nation, the prosecutors, they are going forward, and the death penalty is still an option. And you're probably going to see them, at least initially, say they're going for the death penalty. It can later be taken off the table.
Dan Schorr, thank you.
Thank you.
We're learning